Welcome back to another episode of Recreation Rendezvous at the junction of nature and play. This is Julie Ramey with the City of Bloomington, Indiana Parks and Recreation Department here for another fantastic episode at the podcast studio located at the Banneker Community Center. And with me today is a very special guest. We have Amy Leyenbeck in the studio, and Amy is our operations coordinator who has a really cool part of her job, and that is managing the cemetery. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Julie. It's good to be here.
So we talked a little bit earlier off the air about some things that you never dreamed that you would be doing as the operations coordinator for Parks and Recreation. So usually you're planning to get the water fountains turned on or where the grass needs to be cut, but you had an interesting experience just lately at the cemeteries.
Yeah, I did. So one of my roles at the cemeteries is burial plot sales. So I help people walk around the cemetery and choose their final resting place where they will be buried.
And when we say cemeteries, it's probably worth mentioning that Bloomington Parks and Recreation is actually in charge of two cemeteries here in Bloomington.
Yeah, we have Rose Hill Cemetery, which is on 4th and Elm Streets. You probably see it when you're driving on Kirkwood around that corner. It's a big, beautiful cemetery. And we also have White Oak Cemetery, which is a little bit more hidden away. I didn't even know it existed before I took this job. It's on 7th Street. So it's about 2 blocks northwest of Rose Hill Cemetery.
Well, cemeteries usually are very peaceful places. In fact, Rose Hill Cemetery was selected its location because it was so far outside of town way back when it started, we think somewhere around 1818.
Yeah, that's right. It's hard to imagine that bustling Kirkwood now was once the outside of town. But yeah, it was a peaceful little spot. And cemeteries are some of the earliest parks, really. It was open public space where people could walk around, and it was kept, maintained and green space. So in a way, it really makes sense that the cemeteries fell into the parks department. It's not like that everywhere, but I really love it that we have these special parks.
It is definitely reserved as green space in perpetuity, right? Yep. Because it's a place where our loved ones and friends and family are laid to rest. And we talked about the cost of burial. And when you buy a plot in a cemetery, you're not actually buying the land. You're just buying the right to be buried there.
Yeah, that's right. So it's you do get a deed, but it's not like any other regular property deed. You can't come and build your own building there or, do anything that you want with that land. You are reserving the right to be buried or to have your family members or friends or whoever you decide to bury on that land. That's what you get with the deed. So it's a little different than other property.
And there's a lot of different ways that different spiritual beliefs and religions come into play when you're talking about the end of a life. So Tell us a little bit about that. We talked about big concrete vaults versus green burials.
Yeah, so green burial is a really interesting trend that is I think very popular now, and I don't think it's going to go away. A lot of people are interested in reducing the environmental impacts of burial. So there is really a spectrum of green burial. On the most extreme green side, you would have just your remains in a shroud and in a hole in the ground. That is the most green that you can get. And then you could go up a level to having a pine wood casket that doesn't have any metal that would degrade just as much as anything else in the ground. And then some people in more traditional burials, there is a vault, which is like a concrete box that is 4 sides. And that is the casket is inside the vault, and then the vault is buried. Some religions have the requirement that the body is in contact with the ground. So in some places where they do require a vault, they have a special vault that has no bottom so that the body can be in contact with the ground, but the vault is there to maintain the shape of the gravesite. Without a vault, you have more sinking in the ground, so you have to do a lot more maintenance to keep the ground level. So that's the purpose of the vault. So we have all different kinds of things. People are interested in different levels of that green burial spectrum. We have a section in White Oak Cemetery. The plots are all purchased now, but we do have a section that's dedicated to green burials. So there is no requirement. You can put directly remains into the ground in that section. And that sold pretty quickly. So there is a lot of demand for that.
Sure. Well, there's obviously you can't see under the ground, but above the ground, and really one of the most recognizable things about cemeteries is the markers. Mm-hmm. So there we have at Rose Hill and White Oak cemeteries, again, somewhat historical, right? Founded in the early 1800s. Any variety from a kind of an etched fieldstone to massive obelisks and beautiful sculptures. Tell us a little bit about what you can see above ground.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about the cemetery. I try to take a walk in there a couple times a week just to, keep an eye on the grounds and see what needs to be maintained. And I kind of think of it as like the people there waving to me. Every time I go out there, I notice a different one that I've never seen before. And it's like that person's saying, "Hi, I'm over here." And there's some really cool ones. There's you can kind of see a generational fad too. It's like tombstones of a certain era kind of look the same, and then those change over time. So there's a lot of tree stumps, and that kind of symbolizes a life cut short. So often that's for someone in their midlife sometime that died prematurely. You've got the big obelisks. We have a couple of really famous people in Indiana, and then also, someone worldwide famous who died on the Titanic. There's a memorial to his body. He's obviously not buried here because he is in the ocean. So there is a brochure that we have that's available at the Rose Hill Cemetery office on the corner of 4th and Elm. If you go up to the office on the porch, we have a little kiosk where you can get a brochure, and then you can walk around and find those famous people and their markers and learn about their lives and see where they are buried.
So that's available, and it's probably worth mentioning that the Rose Hill Cemetery office is a little house.
Yes.
It's owned by the city. So it looks like you're walking up on into somebody's yard, but it is the Rose Hill Cemetery office, and the brochures and things on the porch are available 24 hours, so you can stop by and grab your brochure. And there's also some guides that tell a little bit about the symbolism of, like you mentioned, the tree stump and willow trees and lambs and angels and things like that. So if you're interested in that part of art and history, there's some guides for those as well on the porch at the cemetery.
Yes, it's really interesting. I'm trying to learn more about that, and there's actually someone who's going to do a tour on that topic at in the cemetery soon. So there's so much to learn. I've never thought I would be in this area, and I am just fascinated and really falling in love with Rose Hill, especially. It's such a gem, and we get calls all the time about people who want to be buried at Rose Hill.
Well, and the peonies in the springtime are a sight to behold.
Yes.
There's glorious flowers, and they're so lovely. They're so beautiful. And there's an event that Parks and Recreation does in the fall that deals with kind of the history under the stones. Tell us a little bit about the Dearly Departed cemetery tours.
Yeah, this is absolutely one of my favorite parts of my job, that I get to do this. We partner with the Monroe County History Center. They help identify the people that we want to highlight. We choose about 6 different people who are buried at Rose Hill, and they have reenactors portray that person, tell a little bit about their life and about how they died. And they stand at the grave of the person they're portraying. And then we have tour groups that go through and visit each one of the ghosts. They do makeup and costumes, and it's really incredible. I got to go last year, and I was blown away at the quality of the actors and the storytelling that they did. So it's really fun evening, very interesting. You learn about Bloomington and Monroe County history and the people that made this place so long ago, started it and helped shape what is here today.
Well, and it's such an important thing to remember, too, that while we so appreciate the green space and the open areas, that it is indeed a sacred place and there are people there. So we always ask people to be respectful. It's not a dog park, those kinds of things. So there's some cemetery rules to live by, too,
Absolutely.
Before you're actually a resident of the cemetery.
Yeah, and there's a kiosk in the front of the cemetery that has our poster of rules. So if you want to make sure that you're following all the rules, you can stop by there. We also have a map that has some history, too, in the entrance on your way in. So, yeah, I encourage people to check out both of those and go explore, see who you can say hello to.
We have the burial records for both Rose Hill and White Oak cemeteries available online at bloomington.in.gov/cemeteries. Who should or what's the best way for someone who's interested, for example, in maybe purchasing a burial plot at White Oak Cemetery or finding out more about, you mentioned there's some plots that maybe were purchased a long, long time ago, more than 50 years ago, but they're still not used, and we're not really sure what the situation here. So we're in the process of reclaiming some of those.
Yeah. So Rose Hill has not had any lots for sale for a little while now. So, we're doing an audit of our records to make sure that we, have everything correct, both on the database online and referring to our paper logbooks that have been kept for a really long time. So in that process, we are identifying plots that are open, that were deeded to someone who is already buried at Rose Hill, and all of their family members are buried there, but they maybe bought 6 plots and then they only used 4. So we've got 2 that are sitting there that are available. So we're going through to make sure that they are indeed available and that the deeds are over the 50 years old. We don't want to accidentally resell something that people still have a claim to. So we're being very careful in this process, but we are starting a waiting list for people who are interested in purchasing Rose Hill lots. So I would encourage anyone who's interested in buying either at Rose Hill or White Oak Cemetery to stop by the cemetery office or contact me at 812-349-3498. And I'd be happy to answer any questions and provide any information that I can for people interested in that.
Fantastic. Amy, thank you so much for being a guest in the podcast today on Recreation Rendezvous. It was great to have you.
Thank you so much. This was really fun. I hope to come back and share some more stories as we're going through. We're identifying interesting folks that have a rich history. So I would love to come back and share some more specific stories in the future sometime.
So definitely plan to tune in to a future episode of Recreation Rendezvous. So till next time, this is Julie Ramey with Bloomington Parks and Recreation from the Banneker Community Center podcast studio. A big thanks and shout out to the folks at Banneker. And as always, to our podcast wizard, Caleb Poor, who makes this podcast sound awesome. Find Recreation Rendezvous wherever you find your podcasts. Until next time, get out there and check out the cemeteries. Enjoy a walk through the grounds and appreciate the history.